Okay. Well, again, I appreciate everybody not just running out, when you realize Josh isn't preaching. Josh has done so much for us in the last time that he's been here. It's really hard not to hear Josh on a Sunday. I know it's good. But in the past, I have seen Jay start a lot of messages with humor. So I decided I'll start that, with this today. Most of you know I like to run. As you mentioned, it's going to tie into my running. So to keep in line with Jeff Foxworthy, he does the "you might be a redneck if." So I've come up with some that I would rather blank than not be able to run. So I've had a few injuries over the last couple of years. I've had some time to sit back and reflect on this. So should be something for a little bit of everybody in here. Some of you may frown and go, I don't know what that means. But some of you might understand there's one sports one for Jay. I know he'll understand it. So remember, it'll be, I would rather blank than not be able to run. So I'd rather drink tap water from Flint, Michigan than not be able to run. I'd rather eat gas station sushi than not be able to run. I'd rather use a Taco Bell bathroom than not be able to run. Here's one for Jay. I'd rather take a dog to Michael Vick than not be able to run. Does everybody get that one? Okay. I'd rather see Casey Anthony running a daycare than not be able to run. That's pushing it, but still. I'd rather have Tom Brady put air in my tires than not be able to run. I'd rather shower at Penn State than not be able to run. And last but not least, I'd rather have Dennis Rader as my local compliance officer than not be able to run. Hope everybody gets that one. I don't think everybody does. So, do what? You got it. So anyway, the difference between what I do and what Jay do, you guys laughed at these, so thank you. I appreciate it. Jay, I know you guys.
You didn't laugh at your own.
I know I laughed enough just writing this. So, again, you may be wondering why I'm here. I'm going to try not to read this. I'm going to try to do what I normally do and just do from the heart instead of reading something, but this is going to be a little bit different. So last September, I ran a race. It was probably one of the hardest races I've ever ran, and I'll explain that. During the run, one of the things I was doing, I was thanking God about my ability, or for my ability to be able to run, to enjoy nature, and just to be a part of it. Because, as we know, not everybody can get out into nature. Not everybody has the physical ability to get out and do those things. So I was actually thanking him for one of the simplest things I had, and that was the ability to actually be out and do it. So the reason I'm here, there's several reasons, but this is the main one, is that one of the things he told me, and I heard this plain as day during that run, was don't thank me. Tell and share your story. So that's why I'm here. I've done public speaking a lot. I usually don't have a problem with it. This is different. I have a job that requires me to do public speaking. I've spoken in front of 200 people. I've spoken in front of 2 people. It doesn't bother me. But the difference is that's my job. That's my career. It's not who I am. Today is really what you're going to see is really who I am. There's a little bit of a difference. So it's going to be a little bit difficult to talk about, but I'll do my best to get through it. I usually tell audiences that I talk fast, so if you listen fast, we'll get along just fine. I'll try to not talk too fast because I want to keep you guys at least here over 10 minutes. I'm going to bounce around a lot. So I'll try to do my best by using hand signals and so on to kind of tell you where we're at. It's going to be like a Matrix movie. We're going to bounce around a lot. But that's what helps me keep in perspective of where I'm at. So let's be honest with each other. How many times have you all sat in church and you heard this great message, and when you leave, you elbow the person and said, man, that was a great message. I wish so-and-so would have heard that. I mean, we've all done it, right? Or we say, man, I wish so-and-so was here so they could have heard this. So I see these two, obviously, they've gone through that before. Yeah, it happens all the time. So one of the things I found interesting when pastors say, and I've heard Josh say it, and I believe 100%, is this message is for someone today. And believe me, today, this one is for somebody. The interesting thing is that I know who it is. You may not know, you will know by the end, but I know who this message is for. And I just hope that someone will take something that I say and apply it to their own circumstances, and maybe take something out of it. And I'm a person of repetition. I like to hear things over and over again. That's how I learn. So you're going to hear some references, some items today that you've heard recently. So if they bore you, I apologize. If not, I'm at least going to give you my perspective on it. I am going to ask 4 people to read scriptures for me. If I could have 4 volunteers. Be first, volunteer early because the last one's really long. So, well, Dave's hand went up first, so I'm just going to go ahead and hand those out. These are all, most of them are all very familiar. Again, I don't want to be boring, but Luke 6:48 through 49 will be one. Who wants that one? Dave? So Yvonne's going to probably get the last one. We may not even read it. Dave's hand was up first. 1 Chronicles 16:24. Rose, thank you. There's multiple pages here. Luke 7:13 and 14. Gina, and then Yvonne, if you don't mind taking the last one for me.
Luke 6.
48, 49. Luke 19:11 through 27. So we may not read that one. It's long. Josh preached on this one just about 3 weeks ago, I think it was. So let me get to the start of the story. Spring of 2012. No, let me go back. Most of you know I like to run. I like to be active. I just enjoy it. I've run most of my life. In school, it was usually punishment. You know, if you do something wrong, you run, right? After college, I just kept running. Would do it off and on. Never really stayed focused. Never really kept doing it for a long period of time. So in spring of 2012, matter of fact, it was about May 12th, I think it was, I decided to start again. So I did. Laced up my shoes, went out, hit the street, started running. Of course, I was much older than I was before. Seemed like it was hard. But I set myself a goal, and I was going to meet that goal. And I'm not going to go into all that. There's a lot here that I'm not going to talk about that I would still talk about some other time, but not right now. So I felt like I was working hard. I was going through the motions. I was struggling. I was really working hard, but I wasn't really getting to where I wanted to go. And Yvonne will attest to this. I'm a little bit of a tightwad at certain times about certain things. So later that fall, Yvonne and I went to Kansas City to visit friends, and I don't know, I was probably complaining about my legs hurting and so on, and she said, "You need to buy a pair of shoes. You need to buy a good pair of shoes." You remember that? And of course, I did the normal thing. I asked her why. What's wrong with the ones I had? She said they're 20 years old and they had holes in them. So I did the typical man thing. They're just now broken in. I lost that argument. Imagine that, man. So we went to a sports store. I found a pair of shoes. I settled on one, and I bought them. So I got home, put them on, went for a run. And what a difference it made immediately. You know, my feet, my ankles, my knees, everything began to hurt just a little bit less. So the more I ran, the more enjoyable it became. Then I wasn't just doing it to try to stay in shape or just to do something to spend my time, because there was a little empty nest going on at the time. You know, Connor had left, so we were down to one, and it was trying to fill some time. So had a lot of reasons I ran. So I just kept thinking, no, these pains were avoidable, and they were. And it certainly lessened them a lot. But it was this moment that God taught me my first lesson. And this is really the basic one. This is the bottom one. This is one everybody's seen. Who has Luke 46? Dave, is that you? Would you mind reading that?
Building a house who dug down deep and laid the foundation on rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck, I guess that's a storm, that house, but it could not be shaken, because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the storm struck the house, it collapsed and its destruction was complete.
Thank you. Again, I know that's one we've heard many times, but this one was one of the first ones that was just brought to me, and it's really the simple thing. It was about my foundation. You know, I was trying to do something without proper foundation, and that's the verse that God gave to me, that I was trying to do something and I didn't have what it took to start. So once I got those new shoes, as simple as it may sound, that was one of the times he spoke to me and said, you have to start with a good foundation. And without that, you know, everything else could just crumble and could fall. Now, I'm not on that same pair of shoes. I still have them. I still wear them because I don't throw things away either. But that's one of the things that was one of my very first lessons that I've learned. I've learned a lot over the past few years, quite a few of them actually, and I'm only going to talk maybe about 3 or 4 of them today. There's still a lot out there though. So we'll take that step back to last September. I took off on that race knowing it was going to be a challenge. I knew that. Yvonne knew I prepped some for it. She knows where I'm going with this. And I wasn't really prepared for it. I don't think I was prepared physically, probably mentally. Running is a lot of mental challenges as it is just physical. And I really didn't know what I was getting into. But I did what I'm doing today. I stepped out of my comfort zone and I decided to do it. I signed up and I did what preparation I could. We did our looks ahead of time, figured out what we wanted. Started that race and I had every intention of running it by myself. I didn't take my headphones because I was just going to go out there and I was going to mind my own business and I was going to just run. And that's typically what I'm figuring out over the last couple of years, is that's where I have my best God moments, is just when I'm alone out in the woods. I know, Josh, you talk about that when you're out hunting, and it is a great time to be out there. And I was just expecting that. So I was, so anyway, sorry. I was just running, and I skipped a part here. Let's skip that. Well, let me take a step back this way. To reflect upon what I've learned from running a little bit is that many years ago, and I can't remember the exact year, I was out running west of town. It was early in the morning and it was still dark, and I was just, praying to God for a situation to be worked on. I'm not going to go into that situation. But I remember just hearing this audible voice that says, I'll take care of it. That's kind of vague, I mean, you think about it. There was no, here's what I'm going to do, no instruction guide. It was just, I'll take care of it. Make a long story longer, he did. He took care of it. So again, I'm not going to go into it. That's another personal thing that I just don't feel comfortable talking about. So, but he took care of what I needed, or what I thought I needed, to put it that way. It wasn't exactly as I thought, but it was done, and I remember that. So back to September, I left on this race. It's early, and I knew it was going to take an unusually long amount of time for me. So I set out hoping to hear from God, minding my own business. Started out like any other race. My stride was smooth. It was going good. Terrain was flat and easy. That didn't last. I made about a mile into it, and I met these two nice ladies directly in front of me, and they asked me if I wanted to pass them. And I told them no, I'm okay right where I'm at. And they asked because the reason the race changed was we got off a flat road and we turned into a trail. It was called a single path trail, where there's enough room for one person at a time. So to pass, you either be rude, knock somebody down, or you say something to them, you go around them, they get out of your way. So another little bit distant down the road, they asked me again, would I like to pass? And I told them no, I'll be okay right where I'm at. So they were nice enough, and they said they always adopt somebody on their runs, and today I was their adoptee. So I was the run that was going to run with them. So again, that wasn't my goal. It wasn't what I had in mind. But I think in retrospect, I think that was probably the best thing for me. We passed through a difficult section of the race, just enough room to turn sideways. Remember, this is a trail. This is over at Elk City, Kansas, a large city of Elk City, Kansas. Climbed down through some rocks and got back on a path. And this area, according to the ladies I was running with, was affectionately known as the Devil's Butt Crack. Okay, so we passed it, got through it. So we reached a time where the talkiness subsided just a little bit, and I was kind of getting into my rhythm. And again, I began to thank God a little bit for my chance, being a part of the nature, enjoy the beauty. And that's when he spoke those words, don't just thank me, tell and share your story. So who had 1 Chronicles 16:24? Rose, would you read that one? I'll bring this to you. It's a real short one. You get the easy one.
I had just forgotten. Sorry. 16:24.
Yes.
Declare his glory among the nations. He wonders among all peoples.
Thank you. That was the verse that was brought to me, was to declare his glory for what he has done for me. So I held that in, though. Of course, you can see here it is, the middle of May. He said, don't just thank me, spread the word and tell the others. That, again, brought me to where I'm at today. Okay, you remember I said it was a trail run. So if you guys have ever run a trail run, it's not like running on a road. There's rocks, roots, branches, lots of sticks in this trail. First time I tripped, keyword there first, I hit the ground fairly hard. The ladies heard it, turned around, came back, helped me up. So I was bleeding in 2 spots on my right leg, so I didn't need to rub any dirt on it because it was already there, but it was a no-cry thing. So I just kept going. I probably ran another mile and I did it again. I fell again. Bounced right back up, kept going. I stumbled many more times, believe me. But I stayed up. Each time there I stayed up. So the last time I stumbled really bad, I stayed up, but the only reason I stayed up is because I hit my head on a pine tree. So that was a different type of injury that I sustained for that. So I think at that point in time, man, God spoke to me right then, and that was where I got the root of where I'm going to right now is he just reminded me that this race is a lot like my Christian life. I had a long race ahead of me. I knew I had a little bit behind me, but started off easy. And I remember thinking, I got this. This is easy. The further I went, the harder it got. I encountered the butt crack, got through it. As I progressed, though, the obstacles started popping up. They didn't seem too bad at first because your legs are fresh and you can go over them. But the farther you go, the legs get tired. I end up tripping more and more. So my chances of falling and chances of getting injured were much greater. But each time I did fall, the nice thing about it, as I said, those two unexpected ladies that were there, they were there to help me up, encourage me, and keep me going. They're experienced in this. I was not. So it was good to have somebody there to help me. By now I'm getting a little bit tired, and I noticed a need for water. Now I'm sure this could be a sermon just on itself, but I'm not going down that path completely. There were rest stops, which helped me a great deal. I knew I had one coming up where Connor was going to be there. Connor was there to help me. He was at every rest stop that there was manned that people could be at, and he was there. And I was just reminded these rest stops almost feel like my Sunday mornings. I get a chance to come in, I get a chance to refresh, hydrate, eat, get what I needed, and then get right back at it. I hit the trail again. It didn't take me long, I needed more water. So I needed water between the rest stops, between those Sundays. So that's why I think it's great that we have our services or our groups on Thursday night. It gives us a chance to hydrate ourselves, get a little bit of food, whatever we need to get us back through. Because sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but I have a difficult day on a Monday or Tuesday, and it's kind of hard to get back around to Sunday without some help. So it's good to have that, and that gave me the little recharge that I needed. Page 7. I hit one rest stop, hit the first one, and saw Connor. We had a quick exchange. Connor introduced himself to the husbands of these ladies that were running, so we all said our quick highs and so on, and took a couple minutes, and off we went. Gave us just a little bit of a break. At one point in time, I came across a ledge, and the trail took us about 20 feet from a ledge, and it was one of the most spectacular views I had ever seen. I remember looking out to my left, it would have been to the southeast, and the tops of the trees were below me. I was looking down at tops of trees. There's no railway, there's nothing on the side to keep you from falling off. The beauty was amazing, but so was the danger, of course. So who had Luke 7? Gina, 13 and 14. Again, this is very familiar to everybody, so I apologize for the repeat, but I'll put my twist on it. You can read loud enough, but still.
When the Lord saw her, he had compassion on her and said, "Do not weep." Then he came and touched the open coffin, and those who carried him stood still. And he said, "Young man, I say to you,"
That's not the right one.
that's 7:13.
I gave you the wrong one then. I apologize. So I'll go back. I have it here. I just wrote down the wrong one. You guys can correct me. I apologize. That's my fault. I gave you the wrong one. I don't know what it is, but it's when Jesus is saying, "Enter by the narrow gate. For wide is the gate, broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in by it. Because narrow is the gate, difficult is the way which leads to life, and there few who find it." Matthew, thank you. Matthew 7:13 and 14. For me, it wasn't a gate, this was a path. And this, again, was another lesson that I learned. I had a goal. My goal was to finish. I knew I needed to follow that path, albeit narrow and full of hazards, trips, falls, hardships, and challenges. I knew there was an end, and I knew I was going to reach the end. I didn't know what was around the next corner on this trail. I'd never run it before. I never knew what was the top of the next hill. I had no idea what the bottom of the creek. Like life, I'm sure there were shortcuts. There was a lot of different areas I could have went, but I knew the rest went outside that path led to failure. I have no doubt. Remember, I talked about 20 feet away. It was probably 80, 90 feet down to certain death. It looked good, but if I'd have went over the edge, it wouldn't have been good for me. So who knows where I would have wound up had I not chosen to follow the path. It was a narrow one in hundreds and hundreds of acres, square acres of ground. It had been easy to stray off. The ladies even talked about a time they strayed off the path and one of them got hurt. So, it kind of hit me. It's like, why would you stray off the path? But there were times I fell behind and I was a little bit by myself. That's okay. The path was marked. It gave me where I needed to go. But I also had something to guide me and something to follow because it was marked, so that helped. And even when I was alone, I still had a guide. One of the humorous things I found in their book, it said, unless you're a leader in this race, if you run into cobwebs, you've gone the wrong way. I wasn't a leader, but we don't have cobwebs in our life that tells us we're going the wrong way. We have other ways and other things. So the race continued and continued. I had a long way to go. That revelation right there seemed to give me the strength and the power I needed. I'd just been given a life lesson in what I thought was an unusual place. I mean, it was nature, but I'm in a lot of pain. I'm running through a rugged area, and I felt like I was just given a good life lesson. We reached the halfway point, and I was feeling really good. I was pumped because I beat the cutoff time. There is a cutoff time. If you don't make it to a certain area, they take you out of the race. And I knew I had to get to the turnaround time, the cutoff time, before I got there. We took our break, hydrated, got something to eat. About 5 minutes, we headed back the other direction. It was an out and back. It just continued to get harder, believe me. I was at the back of the pack. The three of us were at the back. We passed a couple of people knowing that they were at the very back. And despite what people say, you don't want to be last. But still, we were at the back of the pack, and we were okay with that. My short goal at the time was just to reach Connor at the next point. That's all I was, just trying to get point to point, just trying to make it there. My legs wanted to give up. The pain was intensified. But then, I don't know why, but this phrase came to me. And it's one of them that I've actually believed in. It said, life's greatest victories come after life's greatest challenges. I'm sure you've all heard that before. But that one came to me, and it actually, again, continued to push me a little bit further, because it may not seem like it, but I was going to finish it, and it was going to be a great victory. And it was the greatest challenge I'd had to that date so far. So 9 hours, 3 minutes later, after 31 miles, I made it. I finished. And remember in that last verse when it said, verse 14, the difficult is the way and a few will find it. In this race, I think I was one of the few. Well, I know I was one of the few. 80 people began, 75 finished. I was number 72. That's okay. I finished, and that's what matters. I didn't give up, and I didn't finish. But I guess what happened next was really not what I expected. I guess for some reason I thought I could make a promise to God and he'd just forget it. That didn't work. Generally I don't stand up and talk about myself too much. Yvonne can attest to this. I don't get personal very often with people. It's just not something I want to do. So I thought I could talk my way out of it, and he'd be okay with it. Wrong again. As I said, I've not shared this with anybody, this part. Jay, you thought you knew what you was getting in today, but it's a little bit different. I can even tell you how many songs I've heard on the radio and about fear and being held captive by my own fear. And that's the reason I haven't been here. It's just more fear than anything. It's just getting in front of people and talking about my personal life. I can't count the number of messages Josh preached about stepping out in faith, being bold, listening, being obedient, and so on. Numerous ones. And I was that person that message was for a lot of times. Just never did anything with it. And then texts come from Jay daily. I don't know if he knows how much we appreciate those, but had one of them speak to me personally. It was probably a month or so ago, and it was about developing our character. And I had to quote it out here because I couldn't remember it. And this was a prayer that Jay had put in that text, and it said, "Thank you for choosing me. Help me be your obedient servant. God, when you invite me to join in your work, I will respond immediately. Show me how to respond to what you lovingly reveal to me." That one struck me pretty good because I knew what I had to do, but again, I was still arguing. And then, of course, Easter Sunday really just about did it for me when Josh preached about the servants and the minas and the noblemen. And I hope I got it right this time. If we're doing okay on time, I'm just going to ask Yvonne to go ahead and read the whole thing, and I will put a little different twist on this one than what Josh even did. I think I've got it right, Luke 19:11 through 27. Hang on.
Now as they heard these things, he spoke another parable, because he was near Jerusalem, and because they thought the kingdom of God would appear immediately. Therefore he said, a certain nobleman went into a far country to receive himself a kingdom and to return. So he called 10 of his servants, delivered them 10 minas, and said to them, "Do business till I come." But his servants hated him and sent a delegation after him, saying, "We will not have this man to reign over us." And so it was that when he returned, having received the kingdom, he then commanded these servants to whom he had given the money to be called to him, that he might know how much every man had gained by trading. Then came the first, saying, "Master, your mina has earned 10 minas." And he said to him, "Well done, good servant, because you were faithful in a very little, have authority over 10 cities." And the second came, saying, Master, your mina has earned 5 minas. Likewise, he said to him, you also be over 5 cities. Then another came, saying, Master, here is your mina, which I have kept put away in a handkerchief. For I feared you, because you are an austere man. You collect what you did not deposit, and you reap what you did not sow. And he said to him, out of your own mouth I will judge you, you wicked servant. You knew that I was an austere man, collecting that I did not deposit, and reaping what I did not sow. Why then did you not put my money in the bank, that at my coming I might have collected it with interest? And he said to those who stood by, take the mina from him, and give it to him who has 10 minas. But they said to him, Master, he has 10 minas. For I say to you, that to everyone who has will be given, and from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. But bring here those enemies of mine, who did not want me to reign over them, and slay them before me.
Thank you. I know that's a lot, and it's a long scripture, and I know Josh preached about this, but that's the one that really was kind of my breaking point, I guess. My struggle with, since September is I felt like I was that one servant, or I was a servant that was given a mina. But unfortunately, out of the 3 servants talked about in there, I was the one that hid it and did nothing with it. I didn't do anything with the one that I was given, the one I was trusted. So today is the day that I'm going to take that 1 mina and I'm going to return it. And today is the day that I get to hear the phrase in verse 17, well done, good servant. I love to run. I enjoy taking on challenges and overcoming them. I decided on a marathon in March of this last year. I knew it would be a tough one. I knew physically and mentally. Physically, because 26.2 miles is hard, and mentally, because I had to do it in 2 laps. I know it may not seem like a lot, but when it's the same thing over and over, it gets old after a while. So at the risk of sounding arrogant, the first 13 miles was easy. It really was. It was a good flat course. I knew the second was going to be a lot more difficult. So the first lap, had a lot of runners. I talked to them. I had a lot of time to visit with people. And at the last mile, 7 through 13, I ran with a lady from Winfield, kind of helped her along a little bit. And it helped my transition period. I knew I was going to transition into the park to go do it all again, and she was going to finish. So I was really struggling with that. So I made that transition to the last step, or to the last lap, and it was easy for about 10 steps. I looked east of me, straight down Douglas Boulevard in Wichita. The nearest runner was probably 4 blocks ahead of me. So now I was alone. I've run alone many times. That doesn't really bother me. But I knew I was alone in the streets there, and I had a long way to go. I had a couple conversations with other people in miles 14 through 19. Now, when I run these races, I do a deal with Connor where I text him the number 23. It tells him I finished mile 23, so he knows about when to go to the finish line to wait. So he doesn't have to wait the whole time. I don't want him to stand there. At mile 19, I knew my phone was dying. It was beeping at me. It was telling me it was going to die. So I texted him, told him where I was at, and I was really all alone then. So mile 21, I began to ask God about what can I pull from this race? Because I knew I wanted to pull something from it, and I needed to pull something from it. It took a while, but I got an answer. Now, as a parent, when you ask a question, you already know the answer, correct? As a teacher, you ask the question, you probably already know the answer. I asked a question, I didn't like the answer. The answer I got was, why should I give you more when you've done nothing with what I've already given you? Now remember, I'm at mile 21. I still got 5 miles to go. Very painful miles. This was a very painful race. And that's the answer I got. I really wasn't at a point where I could do a whole lot with it right then. But that's when I was brought back to a sermon. I can't remember who preached it. It was one of you guys about a cup that had been filled to the brim. And you can't fill it anymore until it's emptied. So that was the reference I got, was until I empty my cup a little bit, how can I expect to get more poured into me? So I ran the rest of that race, knowing God was right there by my side, but also knowing what I had to do. And that wasn't the easy part. So that's why I'm here. Again, I hope somebody takes something from it. I'm just trying to get myself in the proper alignment, in the position I need to be so I can receive more. I know I'm willing, now I'm able. I'm going to walk out here today at least half empty or half full, depends on which way you look at it. I've got another very long race coming up in July, and I'm looking forward to receiving something else and hearing something else that day. I hope it works. So I'm sure you've all figured out who this message was for. It was obviously just for me. It was for nobody but me. You know, I've been asked many times why I started running. It's said that every runner has a story. Some started for enjoyment, stress relief, weight control. Yeah, I did all those, rewards. Maybe it's just that awesome bling I get that I like to hang up in my office wall. The question I ask myself is, why do I keep running? I think this is one good reason to answer why I keep doing this. Sometimes I do some of the most foolish things. Yvonne will attest to that. I run some of the longest races, but now I think everybody understands, hopefully, there's more to it than just going out and putting one foot in front of the other for me. There's an opportunity for me. Thank you. That's all I have.